How many archangels are really there? 7. That's the number of days in a week, but not of the archangels. According to Jewish and Christian tradition, there are 7 archangels. In fact, in the book of Enoch, which was written between 100 and 300 BCE, 7 archangels are mentioned for each day of the week. For Sunday, we have Michael, which simply means who is like God. Monday is represented by Gabriel, which means strength of God. For Tuesday, we have Raphael, which means healing of God. Wednesday, it's Uriel, who means light of God. For Thursday, there's Raguel, which means friend of God. And for Friday, we have Remiel, which means the thunder of God. According to some sources, Remiel fell off away later and was replaced by Phanuel, which means face of God. Finally, for Saturday, we have Sariel, which means the Prince of God. Now, while the Book of Enoch is not really considered canonical by most traditions, and neither is it considered truly apocryphal, it is cited by a couple of New Testament writers. In fact, many early Christian writers considered the book to be part of the Holy Scriptures. In the canon scriptures, we find 3 archangels that are most widely accepted. These archangels are Gabriel, Michael, and Raphael. Some early Christian writers, such as Gregory the Great, and most famously Pseudo-Dionysius, also list 7 archangels. Of course, the archangels are listed with some variations of their names. But among the angels, you will always find Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel. Some of the other names that the angels are given include Anael, which means the grace of God. There's Kamael, which means the wrath of God. Then there's Jophiel, which means the beauty of God. We also have Simiel, which means the venom of God. Then there's also Metatron, which means accountant of God. Finally, we have Zadkiel, which means the righteousness of God. Of course, depending with the text that you read, these archangels may come with different names. But let's look at the archangels that are mentioned in the Bible. When we look at the canon Bible, there's only one archangel that is mentioned. That is Michael. In fact, Michael is the only archangel that is mentioned in the New Testament and is accepted by majority of Christians. You can find the reference of Archangel Michael in Jude chapter 1, verse 9. We have to look at the root of the word archangel. The word is a compound of arch, which means ruling, and angelos, which means angel or messenger. Basically, it's the equivalent to the angelic title Archon, which itself means ruler. In Ephesians chapter 6 verse 12, we learn that these archons are mentioned as a class of heavenly beings. For our wrestling is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the principalities, against the world-class powers of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenlies. The rulers here refer to the archons. From this verse, we see that the archons are at the highest level of authority in the angelic realm. This matches the position of an archangel. The angelic archons are also mentioned in many other places in the New Testament. For example, you can find mentions of them in Romans chapter 8 verse 38, Ephesians chapter 1 verse 21, Ephesians chapter 3 verse 10, Ephesians chapter 6 verse 12, Colossians chapter 1 verse 6, Colossians chapter 2 verse 10, among others. Did you know that even Satan himself is twice called an archon? In Matthew chapter 9 verse 34, we learn that Satan is called the archon of the demons. In Ephesians chapter 2 verse 2, Satan is called the archon of the principality of the air. Now, the air is the traditional home of the evil spirits. This identification of archons and archangels is confirmed in the Hebrew scriptures in the Old Testament. In Daniel chapter 10 verse 13, we find that Michael is called one of the chief angelic princes. Therefore, it is quite clear that chief princes and archons mean the same thing. It is what the New Testament refers to when it mentions archangels. The Bible also confirms that there were several of these archons. Now, when we look at Jewish tradition, we find that there were 7 of these archangels. These are most likely the 7 angels that stand before God, as is indicated in Revelation chapter 8 verse 2. The names of the archangels really vary depending on the sources, but the most well-known list is found in the first book of Enoch. In the book, we find Uriel, Raphael, Raguel, Michael, Saragiel, Gabriel, and Ramiel. Enoch was considered scripture by some of the early Christian groups. 4 of the archangels are sometimes also understood to be the 4 angels around the throne of God. These are the 4 living beings that are mentioned in Revelation chapter 4 from verse 6 to 9. You can also find mentions of the archangels in Ezekiel chapter 1 from verse 5 to 14. So, how many archangels are really there? Well, the answer really depends on who you ask. Let's look at the Lutherans. When you ask any Lutheran, you learn that they've never had any 7 archangels mentioned in worship or in any church-sponsored event. Now, Lutherans are really traditionally liturgical on many fronts. However, this aspect of theology didn't seem to carry over into their thoughts following the Protestant Reformation. And while the Lutherans agree with the Episcopalians, who do for most Protestants, there is no system of 7 archangels that really figures at all into their religious tradition. The most popular Protestant answer for how many archangels are there is 1. The one archangel that we are talking about is Michael, and he is named explicitly in the most conservative restricted biblical canon that is used by Protestants. Michael is specifically mentioned in Jude chapter 1 verse 9. For Lutherans and many other churches, popularly known as the Evangelicals, Michael is thus considered the only archangel. However, this does not mean that the churches downplay the roles of other angels mentioned in the Bible, such as Gabriel. Moreover, it also does not mean that the 7 archangels that are mentioned in the Bible, for instance Revelation, are looked down upon. When we look at Mormons, we see that they consider Michael to be the only archangel, as they interpret the word to mean the chief angel. The Mormons also believe that in mortal life, Michael was the first man to be created, that is, the man that other Christians know as Adam. However, Michael is not the only archangel. If we have really to ask how many archangels are there, the answer might be 0. Yes, that's according to the Seventh-day Adventists and Jehovah's Witnesses. Both the Seventh-day Adventists and Jehovah's Witnesses groups considered Michael to be a name for Jesus in heaven. However, it is worth noting that this view can reasonably be considered a minority and conforming opinion, since both churches do not believe in the Trinity. As we wind up, we must talk about the most popular general Christian answer of how many archangels are there in the world. That answer is derived from the Catholic Church. The Catholic makes the majority of Christians. In fact, the Roman Catholic Church is considered the foundation through which other Protestant churches came from. According to the Roman Catholic Church, there are 3 archangels that have to be respected. These are Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael. Now, at this point, you must see the problem that arises when we try to ask how many archangels are there. Raphael is mostly found in the apocryphal text of the Book of Tobit. Now, Tobit is well established among Christians in general, since the Catholic and Orthodox churches both consider it to be fully canonical. However, the majority of mentions of archangels are found in books that most Christian churches do not consider to be fully canonical. For example, let's say that the archangels are 4. Methodists and Anglicans name 4 archangels. The 4 are the 3 that are recognized by the Catholic Church, as well as a 4th one named Uriel. For most Christians, Uriel as a name appears only in 2nd Esdras, which is an apocryphal text, as a messenger whom God sends to answer the questions of the prophet Ezra. The major source for Uriel, specifically as an archangel on par with the other 3, is found in the Book of Enoch. This book is considered outside all scope of biblical canon by all Christians apart from 2 Orthodox groups. There's the Tewahedo Church of Ethiopia and the Tewahedo Church of Eritrea, as well as the Beta Israel community of Ethiopian Jews. In a nutshell, this book is only considered canonical by these 2 groups that are found in Ethiopia. To make things even complicated, different writers at different times have given different names to the 4th archangel. For example, the Book of Enoch clearly distinguishes Uriel from a different angelic entity named Phanuel. However, the Gnostic Christians considered this one and the same, and the Roman Catholic Pope Saint Gregory I once gave Phanuel as the true name of the 4th archangel. When we shift over to Islam, we see Azrael is introduced into the picture. Azrael is considered the 4th archangel, and Uriel has been identified with his name as well in Islam. We can find the names of the 7 archangels in the Book of Enoch. The names are provided as follows: Gabriel, Michael, Raphael, Uriel, Raguel, Remiel, and Sariel. Sariel is also known as Sarakel in some Jewish sources. However, it's worth noting that in a different passage, Gabriel, Michael, Raphael, and Phanuel are described in the Book of Enoch as the 4 angels who stand before God. On the other hand, Remiel is described in Enoch as an angel who falls from grace. Some have interpreted this to mean that Phanuel actively replaces Remiel among the 7 archangels. And of course, once you get up to the magic number of 7 archangels, the number of distinct lists of names gets appropriately larger. So, in the Eastern Orthodox and Byzantine Rite Eastern Catholics, the names of the archangels are given as Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Phanuel, Selathiel, also known as Salathiel, Jagudiel, also known as Jehudiel, Barakiel, and sometimes an 8th, Jerahmiel, also known as Jeremiel. In the Coptic Orthodox tradition, the archangels are Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Suriel, Sedakiel, Sarathiel, and Ananiel. Now, according to Pope St. Gregory I, the archangels are supposed to be Gabriel, Michael, Raphael, Uriel, who is also known as Anael, Simiel, Oriphiel, and Raguel. And Pseudo Dionysius names Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel, Camael, Jophiel, and Zadkiel as the 7 archangels. Finally, when we look at a prayer attributed to Aurelius, we learn about Michael, Gabriel, Sesethiel, Uriel, Raphael, Ananiel, and Marmoniel. And of course, any systemic naming of 7 things inevitably gets associated with occultists. For instance, you may know about the 7 luminaries, which are the 7 traditional planets. That's the Moon, Mercury, Venus, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. You may also know that the list is associated symbolically with the days of the week, and so on. In this whole discussion, you might have realized that we have not mentioned any modern Jewish conceptions of archangels. This is because the Jews even have more archangels than we have already mentioned. In the Jewish Kabbalah, there are not 7 archangels, but 10. The names of the archangels are Metatron, Raziel, who is also known as Jophiel, Zavkiel, Zadkiel, Camael, Raphael, Haniel, Michael, Gabriel, and Sandalphon. Now, this discussion looks like it's not going to end anytime soon. So we'll close by saying that the traditions of archangels vary from place to place. Archangels are living, complex beings who have personal lives of their own, and so anyone who hopes to take them at any kind of face value will be better off served by looking up their roles as individuals. It would be difficult to name names which appear only in lists of archangels, but that's just historical literature for you. If you would like to connect with archangels, you simply have to start learning about them and then get help from other ascended masters. We hope that you've enjoyed this video about archangels. If you'd like to learn more about archangels and how to connect with them in your life, make sure you click the links in the description.